Come on, everybody get set, let's go. It's the next episode. It's the Premium Pete Show. News, interviews, all of the info. Listen up, it's the Premium Pete Show. If you want the scoop in the low, down low, listen to the show, cause Milk said so. Fuck what you heard, better act like you know. Miss Lissa knows. It's the Premium Pete Show.
Internets, welcome back to another episode of the Premium Pete Show. Listen, I think Miss Lissa knows has been kept in Puerto Rico. I don't know where she is. I think she missed a flight, but hopefully we get in touch with her and we find out. I may put a SOS out to the Puerto Ricans out there and let them know, listen, stop fucking around, release her and Rena, and bring her back. But, she'll be back soon, and we'll see you then. Internets, listen, I'm excited. This has been a long time making. My man has been, we've been talking for a while to make this happen. I've always been just a pure fan of his journey, but more importantly, I've been appreciated of how much he's shown love to me over the years. Listen, Internets, I want to welcome my friend, Mr. Ed Woods, to the show. Ed, listen, right off the bat, first of all, I never had so many lawyer friends at a later age in life. When I was young, I had lawyer friends, I was in trouble. Mm-hmm. I'm going on a streak of bringing on lawyers on this show, So, now I have another lawyer on the show.
Okay, yeah.
So I know if I ever get in trouble, I'm good. Not only for criminal, just even brand-wise. But right off the bat.
Lawyers run the world, baby.
I mean, I guess so. Right off the bat, I want to know. I remember you saying that when you were young, right? Mm-hmm. There's a reason why you wanted to be a lawyer. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Now it's expanded because as you start to reflect back, and I'm working on a memoir, so it's like, you start to think of different things that came into your life. But part of it started when I was very young. My godmother and my mother, I used to talk a lot. Mm. And, people would say, tell him to be quiet. And mother would say, listen, let him talk. He's going to make he might make a living like that one day. But, it was really a guy who was older. He was from Jamaica, worked in my father's cab stand, and he would say, he always say, counselor. He called me counselor. He'd say, you got to emancipate your mind from mental slavery. But I just actually, kind of embodied that. And I remember going to school one day, and the assignment was, pick a profession, and they gave us a list of all these different jobs. So I took the list home. I looked at the first thing. The highest paid salary was for a doctor. Exactly. Yeah. And I was like, there's no way in hell I'm doing anything.
Because you didn't fuck with blood.
I don't mess with blood. So I was like, I'm not doing that. There's no way in hell. The next one was an attorney, a lawyer, attorney. So I was like, you know what? I'm doing this one. So it was really a money thing. And then I always like to talk. So it kind of, the two and two, and now that I think back, all kind of combined from it. And then constantly hearing people say he's going to be a lawyer. So I just decided from second grade on, I was going to be a lawyer, and I never changed that, no matter what I did in life.
It's funny because people will become something, right? Mm-hmm. But people don't see how long the process takes. Meaning like, okay, you said you wanted to be a lawyer, but throughout all those years, was there ever a point where you were like, fuck, man, this is tough? Because being a lawyer, I'm sure wasn't easy, right?
No, it wasn't.
Well, becoming a lawyer, I'm saying.
No, it wasn't. Becoming a lawyer was not easy. There wasn't any lawyers in my family at the time. I don't think there was anybody who had a 4-year college degree. I mean, since then, my family has grown. So, cousins and everything. I just had, great gift to hear that one of my little cousins just became a scientist. Mm. So it's like, you see, the family tree expanded. But at the time I was coming up, there was no lawyers. I don't think there's still no lawyers in my family. So I didn't know any lawyers. I didn't know what lawyers did, just maybe watching TV. But I just knew that it was going to be a process. But, it was something I never worried about because I knew that was far off toward the end of my journey. See, I've always looked at everything that I ever did, and I learned this kind of from my mother and father, really my father. But the life, because he drove cabs, so everything's like a highway, and you're in a certain lane. So you basically have to look at it that way. You're not going to get to the end of that road. It's from the jump start. So there's going to be a whole journey that you got to take to get to the place you're going. But at least I had a goal that was set that was going to end at some point where I would end up at.
Yeah, no, it's funny because you think about it. Sometimes people have, ideas in their mind from a young age of what they want to be. And then sometimes things just change. Or they get maybe this is too hard, or they get bored of it, or they see something else. Because keep in mind, you were young. So you could have just seen something else later on in life that was more intriguing.
Absolutely. I mean, I went through stages. You know, at one point I was like, okay, I'm pursuing my rap career. I put out a
Really?
record.
Mr. Woods, Mr. Woods spitting bars.
Yeah, I can't do it no more. I lost the edge. But I was a beast. I mean, I put out a record in '86. So I was always into music, and music was a part of my life. So, like, I grew up in a household where my father communicated with my mother through music.
What nationality was your father?
They all, Black American from the South. My mother's from Alabama. My father's from Tennessee. I spent my summers in the South. So I had the Southern culture of being out in the South. I'm talking about deep South, dirt roads, pigs couldn't roast it in the ground, that kind of thing, moonshine.
Hog mog?
Yeah, whatever. It was all, ribs, but that kind of culture with blues and jazz and listen to all the greats that came up out of that era. And then coming back to New York and being in New York for the school year and, basically being around when I was at the beginning when rap started. I mean, my sister's 7 years older than me. So she was listening to, that kind of end of the disco era and right when the rap music was starting. So it was like I got to be appreciative at a young age to be listening to her records and things that she had. So I was around music all my life.
Crazy, because usually it's like the older brother, and for you was the older sister.
I had an older brother too, but my brother was a little different. You know what I mean? He was just a little different. He was into we didn't have video games back. He was into the comic book thing and whatever. But my sister, she went to Andrew Jackson High School, which is Jackson in Queens is like that was the
Now
Mecca.
you grew up in Queens. You're born and raised in Queens, right?
Jamaica, Queens, Farmers Boulevard.
Listen, shouts to Queens. I mean, I'm a Brooklyn kid. I really only fuck with Queens when it's Brooklyn Queens Day. But
you come to Queens to do that because that's Flushing Menlo Park. So,
no, but listen, you said that you went away for the summer.
Yeah.
So during the school year, right? Mm-hmm. Did mom and dad live together?
Up until I was about 15.
Okay.
But my father moved down the block. You know what I mean? It wasn't like...
Okay. He just said, I'm going to take this up.
He was on the other side of Farmers Boulevard, and my mother was on the other side of Farmers Boulevard. I always say, and my mother always say, my father was a great father, but a horrible husband. You know what I'm saying? So, our family was still kind of close-knit.
How was your relationship with him?
Who, my father?
Yeah.
Well, he passed away when I was 66, but my father was like... I ran with him like that was like, since I was a kid, I got pictures of him and I in suits. I would go to the racetrack with him. I used to run the card games, like as far as serving drinks, food. They do the fried chicken on the card games. We had a card game we used to go.
So Pops was a gambler.
And he was just in the mix. See, what I always try to explain to people about, if people say I'm from the street, whatever, they give that identification to it. But the street doesn't necessarily mean that you somebody who was in the criminal activity, because there were guys who were in the criminal stuff and doing that. Then you had guys that were blue collar guys. You had people who gambled, people who did the numbers, but we all lived in the same community. So therefore, you have the experience of being a part of the street, but not having to do anything that's in a criminal space.
Sure.
So I was around all of that, but it was one big happy family at the end of the day until that crack era hit, and it kind of changed. But and you got to realize the time I grew up in Queens we were like the birth of that commercialization of rap music. So you got LL 10 blocks this way, Run DMC on Hollis Avenue, up another section. You go to Queens Village, you got Salt and Pepper. If you went over into Rosedale or in Elmont area, you had like Fat Boys. You had, Q-Tip and them on Linden Boulevard. Sure. And it's so many kids in the neighborhood. Everybody doesn't know each other.
The birth of that,
but it's all right there. Damon John and Fubu and all calling them. They were in one block. So if you were 2 or 3 years older, you might not have known each other. But we all attended the same park jams. We all were part of the same thing. Mikey D was like a incredible, battle artist back then, right? So the park jam thing was incredible. We go out in the parks, and it was different. We had the park jams, and then you had the block parties where they set up on both sides of the street. One side of the block is one crew of DJs and MCs, and on the other corner, and they battling back and forth. So it was part of this whole culture that you were living in. And, I think that's what's missed today when you think about, when we'll get into that, but when you think about what's going on in hip hop right now, you don't have that kind of like energy that was going on because everybody was just having fun doing it.
Yeah. You think it was more of a business now?
It's more of a business, and I think that, you know, this was something where, you know, people would just set up speakers. So like I had a speaker, and I remember this, and the older cats would come get my speaker when they was going to, because they put a bunch of speakers together. They plug up into the light post, get the lights going, the electric going. Next thing you know, that particular night at the new park, everybody's in the park. You know what I mean? So, you know, but everybody was kind of a part of it, whether it was young kids or whether you were older. And, you know, it was just a different time. It was a different time. And we didn't have the distractions. So there was no cable. There was no cell phone. When you left the house, if you didn't know where the hell somebody was going to be at, you couldn't find them.
It was impossible. That was a very hard game of manhunt.
Yeah.
Yo, let me ask you. You grow up. You got your pops. You seem like you're close with your pops.
Yeah.
You know, hanging out with him. What would you say helped you stay away from the street shit? That help you stay, like, become a lawyer? Because I'll be honest with you, I asked this even to Kenneth Montgomery, who was on a couple of episodes ago. How did you not fall into the street shit and get in trouble? Because it's very easy back then.
Yeah. I mean, on any given moment, you could have had a situation. I mean, I had a kid pull a gun on me when I was 16 years or 15 years old at a house party. We get into it in the basement. You know, it gets to step outside. We go outside, everybody's in a circle, and he pulls the gun out, and my guy snatches the gun out of his hand. So the gun doesn't go off, but it just, you know, those kind of things could have happened. So you see these incidents now with kids, you know, they get jumped and whatever. You didn't have cameras, so you didn't see the type of things that went on. You had that type of stuff go on all the time. But what the difference is, my father gave me a means to make money. So a lot of cats that were doing things back then, they were really just trying to eat. Like, you know, if you had my client Corey Pegues on here, he told you he started because he was wearing worn out shoes and he was just like in the street because like, yo, I'm not going to go to school and look dusty every day and you competing trying to get girls and one kid got money and the other one doesn't. So my father put me to work when I was young.
He owned the
car service, Eddie Woods car service.
Okay, yeah.
And anybody from Queens knows that cab stand to this day, and some of them still remember the phone number.
So you started working in there. I
started working. First of all, I started cleaning the toilets.
Really?
Right? Yeah. He had me doing that since I was like 7, and I hated it.
What do you mean? He just told you to clean the toilets?
You got to clean the toilets, and these nasty cab drivers, they in there, you know, not, you know, just going all over the floor and everything. But that was my job, to keep the toilets clean. Then I switched to dispatching, which is first answering the phone. So back then, you call for a cab in the neighborhood, somebody got to answer the phone, then they kick the call out to the drivers. Then I started working the desk where I'm actually dispatching. And then back then we had this policy, we go anywhere, anytime. So once the drug game hit heavy and started getting heavy in like 85, yo, these dudes, we would go anywhere. We drive them to, you know, to city, Harlem, wherever, Bronx, because at the end of the day, they can get in the car and drive. You drive them somewhere. If they were picking up something, drugs or whatever, they got deniability. They say it ain't theirs. They found it was in the cars under the thing, and I'm the driver. And I used to people get in my car and be like, looking over the top and be like, yo, who is this? They're like, you ain't old enough to drive. And I'm like, yeah, I am.
How old were you?
16 when I started driving cab.
Really?
Yeah. I had a permit.
How long did you work that for?
I worked it till I went to school. Then I would come home in the summer for a couple of weeks, and I used to work nights. So that's when you got the most money.
Sure.
So I would work nights and, you know, load up, you know, I can make $600, $700, $800 a day, and then, you know, pile that up and then go back down I went to Hampton University. I just go right back down to school.
You said something, and I want to touch back on that. Pause, but I want to touch on. You said that you went in the summer. You went to down south.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember one time RZA, when we were on the Combat Jack show, RZA was saying that his uncle lived in like Florida, and when he was able to get off of Staten Island for the summer and go to Florida, that really changed his perspective and his mindset to that he could do anything because he saw more than the block. You know, did that going away from the South? I mean, did that do something for you getting that away from Queens?
Yeah, South was like, you know, that was an experience. It was like a 3 or 4 week run that we would do, and back then you drive. You know, I didn't get on a plane until I was in college, so we used to drive.
Why is that?
Yeah, no money really for that. You know, everywhere we drove drove straight through. We do 2 days. And you don't want to stop nowhere, so you basically 2-3 carloads of family. We go down. They switch drivers. And, you know, you carry your Spam and your cheese and crackers and fried chicken in the car, and you go straight through. But we did all that. But when you're down there, you in the country, and back then, you know, New York was really like it was a big deal for a New Yorker to come to the South. This was before the music changed. So when you showed up, New York was like, yo, you the man. You show up, all the kids, it's like, oh, they want to know about New York and the buildings and whatever. But you got a sense to see how they moved, and they actually moved like hard work. I learned how to wash a car by my cousins in the South, because they would wash a car all damn day, and then we just ride it for 2 or 3 hours. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And I was like, that was the big thing of the day, where everybody's at the car wash, then we take a ride. And I'm like, you know, and throw beer out the window the whole time we was driving around.
What about that? What about their attitudes? Meaning, like, growing up in New York, Queens, you know, even from what I seen later in my life, being a Brooklyn kid, you know, like always like mean mugging, hard rock, you know, thinking people are gonna, you know, like having your guard up and ready. Yeah. When I went down to the South for the first time, this was, you know, maybe in Texas or Atlanta, I realized that Southern hospitality. Did you realize the difference of people's attitudes versus Queens?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you got to realize my father had a huge family, and my mother, 11 brothers and sisters on both sides. So when we went down there, the cousin game was crazy. It's like one of my uncles had 17 kids.
Damn.
So you got all these kids running all over the damn place. But what happened is they had moved to their respective cities. So they come back. Everybody would come home for the summer with their kids. And you got, you know, one that moved to Detroit, one that moved to Chicago. So when we all get together, we learning about each other. But definitely the hospitality was there. But the thing I did learn is you learn to like actually to knuckle up with your game, because them country boys, like, they was strong. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because they out in the pitching watermelons and doing whatever. So, yeah, so you would come back with a whole new attitude, because even though they was country in their own way, they'd tear you up if you get in a fight with them if you didn't know what you was doing.
Hit you with a raccoon right in the cross the head.
Just because they used to doing things differently. Yeah. But I loved it. I loved the experience. But you know what I want to point is that the driving a cab thing is really what got me my lawyer skills, and I used them.
Why you say that for?
Because I always felt like when I drove a cab, I picked up. It's like I had these antennas that had to go up. You had to make decisions in a cab. It wasn't like a glass window in front of you sitting in a car. Somebody gets in the car, and you have to figure out from the moment they get in your car whether, one, they're going to make me drive all day around, not pay me, rob me at some particular point, you know, run some kind of scam, and next thing you in the middle of it. So you had to understand how to maneuver in the street. So like, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. I go to pick somebody up. They call from an address. If I don't see them physically walk out of the house, I would keep going, because they could have just called from that house and act like they lived there.
Sure.
You got a comfortability factor once they get in the car, and next thing you know, you getting stuck up somewhere. Or sometimes the worst customers was the little grannies, the little grandmothers. They get in the car, but they ride all day, and then they tell you, you know, my son, you know, Raheem is going to pay you. Now, Raheem ain't paying me nothing. Now, I'm running the road this woman all day, and she's like, you can find Raheem on Linden and whatever. So I'm rode this one. I done wasted my whole day, and she doesn't pay me at all. So you had all types of things that was going on. And another thing I learned that my father taught me is always treat people with respect. And I learned that from being around a cab stand. Because we used to have a guy that
why do you think he says that?
Because he said the same individual that might be going through something could potentially save your life and put you in a better position, and you don't know where, and you're going to see that person in that situation. So we used to have a guy that used to steal our CBs at night. He'd jump in the cars in the middle of the night, take them and sell them. We knew he was stealing the CBs, the little radios that you had to use. And then my father would let him sweep up and then pay him a couple of days later in front of the cab stand. I'm like, and I'm pissed. I'm like, why are you paying him? You know, he stole he's like, listen, let me explain something to you. The 1 or 2 radios he stole, me treating him right, he can be the same guy when your mother's walking down the street coming from the bus stop from work that won't hit her in the head with a brick or take something from her because he knows that there's a relationship. He's on drugs. So he's got to treat him with a certain level of respect no matter who he is. And he's a potentially save your life.
No. I listen, I always say, you know, the message is the most important thing. You never only worry about the messages. Sometimes people see, like, when I was away, I learned stuff from crackheads.
Yeah.
Like, and I would say, like, yo, where'd you go wrong? And they would tell me where they went. The gems you could find from somebody doesn't necessarily have to be the most appealing person that you could think. You know, like, people think people in a suit, you know, just because they're in a suit mean that you're going to get exactly, you know what I mean?
They got no damn common sense. Like, my father's common sense was so amazing to me. He would do things like tell me stories. He would say, listen, he told me a story. A guy ran up on him one night. He pulled out on him trying to rob him, right? He turns around and tells him, yo, I'm getting ready to go do the same thing. I got a card. There's a card game going on Sutton and 115th. I'm on my way over there. Why don't you come over there with me and we go get this money over here? And the cat went for it. And he talked himself out of the situation and he just dipped off once he got able to split. So you have to put yourself in the shoes of how do you think on your feet? And that's what a lot of, times I think some people are missing. And that becomes very effective in your negotiation skills, how to get up from the table, what to do, and how to respond. You could tell a lot from the way a person moves, the way I pay attention to body language. I always tell people, listen, you walk in a room, right? You walk into a meeting. There's a glass window that's facing outside. What side of the table do you sit on if you trying to make a deal with somebody, right? They say, well, I face, so I'm looking at them and I'm faced where the sun's not in my face, so whatever. But I said the sun is in their face. You want them to focus on your mouth and looking at you. So you take the blame. Let them look at you and let the sun hit your face. But at least they can see. You want the sun hit. You don't want the sun blocking them. You want them focused in on what you're saying. So you have to use your body, your messaging, all in your body and all in your positioning in anything that you do.
Later on in life, as being an entertainment lawyer, amongst many other things, also becoming, doing TV shows and doing a book and helping people build their brand, regardless of it. We'll get to that. But being an entertainment attorney, when you started doing deals and, doing with Diddy or Usher or Jay or anything that you've dealt with over the years, what was something that you took from back then, especially in, working with the cab, that you used or realized, like, man, I've learned this from back in the day? That you kept from, you know what I mean? Something that you brought with you from your childhood.
Well, one of the things that I always use, and this is across the board, and this is how I identify clients that I know are going to be stars. I always think back to that one kid when I grew up in school, in the neighborhood, and I tell everybody to do this. There's always that one person that outdid everything you did in life. Like, you go and he plays better basketball than you. He always gets the girl. Everybody got that person.
Sure.
They think about it, they can remember it. I said, think back to that person, and that's the individual that you want to spot when you see whether they're a star or not. Whoever commands that room and has that kind of mystery. So there was this kid I grew up with. I swear it didn't matter. If I wanted a girl, I can get any girl I wanted. I was a smooth-looking cat. But everything that I wanted that was the best thing I wanted, this dude had it. And I just couldn't beat him in anything. Grades, anything. He beat me at everything. I come in second. But it inspired me to go, when I start to reflect back, I say, who's that person and do they have that factor? And then also the way to carve a deal. I'll tell you a funny deal I did. One of the best deals I did. And I used my skill set of how to change the dynamics to get it done. I'm representing Black Hand. Shout out to Chaz Williams. So from, you've seen him on American Gangster.
Yeah.
We went out to L.A. to basically secure the rights to do a film for the Black Gangster, the Donald Goines books. So we get out there and we sit with the publisher, old cat. He comes out and he's giving us all this whole thing about how much money he wants to do for the rights. So we go out the room, come up with the idea. I say, you know what? We don't need the movie right now. Let's just go back in and ask for the artwork from the cover of the book. And then we're going to put it out as the soundtrack to the movie. So he was like, never heard of that before. He was like, for low money, he was like, okay, yeah, you can use the cover of the artwork. And we put out an album with DMX, Ja Rule, Jay-Z, 50 Cent, all of them on it. Classic album with the movie coming, which the movie never came, but we used the soundtrack and we had the original artwork from the book as it. And that's just thinking outside of the box, not settling for, well, hey, okay, we're going to spend $100,000 $400,000 on the rights for a movie that we got to still go make it. Nah, we're going to basically flip this deal, get to what we need to get done and put this album out. And it became a classic.
You said one time, and quote me if I'm wrong, but you said anything that is not nailed down is mine. And anything that I can pry loose is not nailed down. Mm-hmm. Explain that a little further.
Well, that's a quote that they use from a legendary railroad baron used. Mm-hmm. It's defined under John Henry. But basically what it's saying is that no matter it's basically you going to the extent that you're going to basically go out there and with all your drive to win, but you're going to take also what you can take. And if you can get it loose, then you actually going to go after that too. So you're taking it a little further than just, I'm going to go out and make a deal or whatever, or close this particular matter. I'm going after every piece of business that I can get. If it's not locked down, and if it's locked down, but I can pry it loose, then it was never really closed. So that's why I always say, if you're going to close a deal, make sure you close it. Nowadays it's wires, but make sure the check comes in, the check clears.
Make sure the wire comes in.
Everything's cleared before you start celebrating and high-fiving and patting asses in the ends before you get in the end zone.
Now, let me ask you, what do you think about 360 deals today?
I mean, they are what they are. I mean, 360 deals, just for those that don't really know what they are, is basically the opportunity for the record companies to share in revenue, different buckets of income when at the offset of when the music business was declining. They felt like, okay, we're funding these artists to go out. They're putting out their records, radio, we're spending money marketing, all these things, and they're going out doing shows. They're getting book deals, they're getting film deals, television,
sure.
But we're making them stars. So this whole thing of 360 deals actually came about because of that. Now, the difference is that the policing of a 360 deal I've yet to see a record company sue an artist for not paying them because they can't police it, especially on a certain level. Now, what you find is where the 360 deals did work is on the massive level, like the Hannah Montanas, which has started from the Disney space. And then you saw deals that were happening with, Live Nation building these deals with, guys like Jay-Z and whatever. They share in different revenue streams and they pay them a shitload of money up front to be a part of the touring. They finance the albums. They do whatever. But like these up-and-coming artists, not even just up-and-coming, mediocre, medium artists, successful artists, I go out and do a walkthrough. I'm not cutting you a check, and so there's ways to get around it and say that you can carve the rights back so far back that they really don't get anything out of it.
So many people complain about 360 deals and say they're horrible. But I want to ask you a question. Going back to your early days of being an entertainment attorney, everyone always talks about that first deal. Mm-hmm. That's always fucked up for people. Mm-hmm. Has that really honestly become, from somebody who is an entertainment lawyer, is that really the business of how it works? A person's first deal is always fucked up?
Well, I mean, it's about leverage. I mean, if you were coming to the table, you spending no money, right? Somebody's putting their money into you, financing you, putting clothes on you, sending you around, promoting and marketing, whatever. They're gonna get the lion's share of what comes in. That's just the nature of any business. If I walked into your block and said, "Hey, build me, I'm gonna build you a house and whatever," and you ain't paying for it, you're not gonna own it. So what you have to understand is that, some of these deals, I carve back on deals because I have a lot of leverage. I've been doing this long enough to basically, and I started when I was aggressive when I first started.
Sure.
I'm like, we ain't doing that type of deal.
Now, when you just started, was that when you and Combat Jack, Reggie Osei, started the Osei and Woods law firm?
That was right after we left Louise West, who gave me my start, and I worked for about 3 months, and she basically got rid of me, and me and
Why'd you get rid of you?
Nah, she was just we great relationship, but she was ready to do something else, and I was extremely aggressive. Like, I was one of them guys that came out of law school and was like, I'm taking over the world. And I came up with at a time when the other individuals, whether they were lawyers or doing other things, we're all the same age. So if you look at like Puff and Mark Pitts, who had, J. Cole and all those guys now, sure. And Wayne Barrows, all these guys out there, Harv Pierre's, we're all the same age. Derek Angeletti, shout out to my client. We all came up. It was like a renaissance. D-Dot, so it's like you came up in a period where everybody was young and aggressive in what they were doing, and we brought that approach to the lawyer side. Because when I first started as a lawyer, they were like, man, I would show up in hoodies, Timbs, to a meeting. And I'm like, so they started being like, the joke was, here come the hip hop lawyers.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I didn't care. I was like, this is what we do. We do it a little differently than what you guys do. Because you wearing the shiny shoes and the glossy shirts showing up because you've been representing Peebo Bryson and and Luther and those guys. We came in like, we representing a new era, and this is a new way of how we gonna do business. You're not coming to the studio at 4 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning and then hanging out to 6 o'clock in the morning at the club. I had no responsibilities, so it was like showtime. I was everywhere, and I did everything that the artist did, but I would have done it anyway because I was already in the mix, hanging out. I just did what I did best, got in the mix, hung out, and did and I was in the studio. The problem came about when artists that you jump-started, because we would get them first. They came to us. Then it got to the point where this whole thing became, once I get going, I need to go get a different type of attorney, the white attorney that can actually get me the bigger deals. So what happened is we got that whole, pushback of trying to snatch clients. We had a great retention rate, though, because I was super aggressive. Like, you went after my clients, I'm coming to your office. You got to explain that, and I've had some stories like,
What do you mean? You should just run up and...
Yeah, I've had some stories. I calmed down because it didn't make sense after a while. As I've gotten older, everybody grows.
This is when you were practicing by yourself?
No, this is when me and Reggie were practicing. So he was like
the good guy and you were the crazy guy?
So I would get pissed if I found out somebody was trying to take... Like one time, somebody took his client right after they closed the deal on the other side from us. So I come in the office, I'm like, hey, what do you mean the guy has our client now? And he's like, well, he decided to go. I said, no. Get your stuff, let's go. We went down to his office. I threw everything off his desk, flipped the damn thing over. It was just, but I that was my way of expressing, and it was, obvious unprofessional at the time, but that was just me having to grow. But at the same token, that's just the way I felt, because it got to the point that I realized as long as I was delivering, they couldn't ban me from doing what I was doing. I wasn't physically putting my hands on people, but at the end of the day, it was you had to show some kind of, I'm not taking it.
I'm not a sucker.
Yeah, but another thing is, it wasn't what I tried to explain to my clients. I was like, we have families too. We, people having kids and trying to get going. You're helping somebody else's kids go to school, and the only reason they have this ability to do what they do is because you're giving them your talent. So what you ended up happening is exactly what I thought was going to happen, is the deterioration of everything that was built up in our community being snatched as a culture again, and now it's controlled and owned by everybody else. That's why you have lack of black execs in the industry now. You got one black chairman in the industry right now, which is Sylvia Rome. And she's the president of the company. The chairman was L.A. Reid, who they just let go, or he just got stepped down. So here it went from in the 70s where you had black execs like Larkin Arnold and all these people who ran these companies. You had people who own their companies like Dick Griffey. These guys were actually putting out the Whisperers, putting out various artists. I mean, they were just killing them, and they was developing their acts. They had marketing departments, they had promotion dollars, they had black radio money. And then what happened is once our music got so successful, hey, get that back. This needs to come over here. The indie promotion guys, they started spending more money on black music. So now all of a sudden, make that go to the pop department. So what you had is basically a infiltration once again, and it goes from back to the beginning of time, and that we've allowed our culture to be snatched and our assets to be taken. And I'm the one to speak out on it because I don't care. Nobody. I don't live and die on what somebody else does, and nobody else is paying my bills. I make my own money. So I'm just making this point that's what always fueled me from the moment I started in this business, and I haven't changed with that kind of attitude because I always felt it was going to be a problem.
But do you foresee it even in these days as you spoke? Do you foresee it ever changing? Do you see how could this, be changed to where? I think
I think it's something that internally that we have to deal with as a community to understand when you create something. We used to have. I remember growing up in my neighborhood, all the businesses in Queens were pretty much black owned. We went to the tire shop, it was black owned, the mechanics. And then once things started changing, everybody stopped using, except for the two things they won't change is their barbers and their salons. But now they almost changed that too with the nails. They got the nails out of the, so we've allowed it to happen. So potentially the way it works right now, 50 years from now, somebody told me this when I first started, 50 years now, and I used to be like, nah, no way. You'll think that rap music was started by probably Eminem and Ice-T because it's the way you paint the picture and you keep retelling the story. That's why it's so important for what you do and what other podcasters do and people who are creating content and programming to document these stories. I love the fact that the guys went back and started doing things with talent that started in this business, even though they might not be, who wants to put like this? I always say like this, they argue with old timers all the time. I'm old enough that if my 9-year-old don't want to hang out with me, like when it comes to music, my father wasn't listening to hip hop, but so you don't want to hang out with him like that, but at least we shared in the same culture and community. We protected it.
Sure.
And that's what we got to get back to.
And you could have put him onto something and he could put you onto something. Like, this is what I'm checking out. And you're like, you got to check out this. Because to be honest with you, a lot of these kids don't realize that the samples come from now 90s hip hop. Yeah. A lot of these newer songs now are being sampled from 90s hip hop, which was sampled from 60s and 50s. Yeah. So it's evolving. You know what I want to say with the combat and the Osei and Woods. How long was that for? How long did Osei and Woods?
We lasted about maybe 6 years.
Now listen, a lot of people talk about you guys together and being a powerhouse together and really working together. Him being the good cop, you being the bad cop, so to speak, or whatever. Just being somebody that went after and worked with a lot of people. It's funny too because I know sometimes Combat will get a bad rep where Nori will say the contract he did that he jerked him. But I want to ask you, what were some of the good deals that you did and the good things that you did with people? Because I think that doesn't get brought to light a lot. Like how many good things and how many deals you brokered for so many people you in combat.
Well, I mean, we had a lot of clients, and don't get me wrong, not every deal goes right. But I don't think, I think a lot of times it's selective amnesia with deals.
Sure.
So, people, say, I thought it said this and I should have said that. But I represented Kelly Price from the beginning of her career. And I've always been proud of that because I took with her, we started together on her first album. And we put it together from soup to nuts, and nobody thought it was going to win. And we did it right out of that small office, and we took the world by storm. So when they started Def Soul, they built the whole brand around it. Then, when I got her out of her Ron Isley deal, I had to actually file a suit against Ron Isley, who I was a fan of. And here I am sitting there, and Ron Isley is crying in the conference room. And I'm like, I'm killing my whole relationship that ever could have with a guy I saw as legendary icon.
He's like, call him up.
Yeah. It was a horrible experience, but we did what we had to do.
Did you win that case?
Kelly's been out. Yeah, come on. I don't lose cases. I win.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Woods, okay.
Nah, so but we represented a lot of people. I mean, the Jay-Z thing, I always use that as an example. It was a new client. I mean, it was a client that was already with Louise West. When we left, Reggie took him with him, so we had him as a client. And it was a great relationship. We did the Reasonable Doubt album.
Sure.
And Jay and I still cool to this day, no issues. But what happened is a lot of politics going on. And I learned a big lesson from that relationship. Never refer a client to someone to bring on board that isn't in a position to make the decision making on what happens with that client. So to give you an example, and I really don't care, I'm going to share this story, is that I actually referred him to a friend of ours who was a business.
Who are you talking about?
I referred him to a young lady who was a business accountant.
Referred who?
Jay-Z and them.
Okay.
Yeah, because they were actually basically, a firm a company wasn't, and they needed a professional accountant firm to handle their cutting their deals. So I referred them, so I take the blame for that. I referred them to the young lady, but what she did is she worked for John McNeely. John McNeely was a guy, and John McNeely, if you're listening, you should send me a check one day, is that John McNeely, I gave him to John McNeely, right? Because she went through her. But what happened was I felt like he was undermining the relationship. So what would happen is every time we close a deal, he would come behind and show up like after the deal and say something was wrong with this or something was wrong with that. So it constantly kind of deteriorated the relationship. And it got to a point that, they sat us down and was like, hey, we're going to move on. And they went on and did their own thing.
You're talking about Jay-Z.
Yeah. But you know what? Out of all that was said and done, if anything, anybody can say a bad deal that Reggie cut that made no sense, it's still that deal that they did was for one album. Sure. That's the only reason they was able to do or go make a deal to do what they did with Rockefeller. It wasn't for 10 albums or 7 albums or 5. So no deal is going to be great in the beginning. And some of the best highly negotiated deals, the artists never make any money and never come out anyway. Some of the worst deals that start with a guy, and so what happens is these deals are always renegotiated. Once the artist is in a leveraged position, it's like you can't force them to perform. So you either going to figure out a way to pay them to make them feel comfortable that they're moving forward, and these terms are constantly being renegotiated every single time.
To date, what is your best deal you feel you ever did?
Best deal?
Yeah.
Now, I've done a lot because I've helped a lot of people do deals. So I remember James McMillan, who's my guy. He's doing well with Machine Gun Kelly. Shout out to James McMillan. He brought me in when he was first getting started. He used to work for me. He was getting started, and I helped him flip the 8 Ball and MJD deal. That was like, he was like I came in and just destroyed these guys. And it was, I did all of the back negotiations on the DMX label deals and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily have a particular deal that I did because it's not necessarily a deal. I think it's more of a progression of what you've built on somebody's career. Like I felt like at the end of the day, there's certain people that I help become stars and help them. Ryan Leslie, for example. I took Ryan to every single meeting you could imagine, and nobody wanted to mess with him because they always were like, he's a good producer, he'll never make it as an artist. And I was like, no, you don't understand. He's a star because I'm using the same factor of what I saw in this. Who's that kid that everybody wants to be like? And he didn't care. This guy took him to a meeting in L.A. Reid's office, and we were waiting in the lobby. He had brand new wood he had just set up in his lobby, and Ryan used to wear these dirty, rusty boots, and he was doing splits the whole time. So by the time they came out to get us for the meeting, they had scuff marks all over his new wood. He just wanted to win. It was a certain passion that he wanted to win. And I managed him for 5 years, and I really put a lot of effort and time into making him, helping him to be who he was. He's always talented, genius.
Sure,
but
definitely.
I put a lot of time into it. And then, my guys, the Hitman producers, was I mean, I enjoyed that experience because every
Stevie
damn
J,
song, it was
D-Dot,
Nasheem, Ron Lawrence, Young Lord, Mario. I mean, I'm basically every record coming out of Bad Boy. Every time they look up, they got to see me. It was like,
What's your relationship with Diddy?
We've always had one of them kind of relationships that's kind of like, we've had some good times, a lot of bad times. I don't wish anything ill will on him. I wish him the best.
Are you getting any Ciroc sent to your door?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But I've done a lot. I've put it like this. I've done a lot more good and been more, I think, of a asset to helping him do certain things he did in life than I get credit for. But I don't harbor on that because everybody got their thing.
Why do you say that?
Because we were always at odds with each other, meaning like I'm protecting my guys and I'm not buckling under any circumstances. One thing I learned from an old time, he said your integrity, your talent can get you there, but your integrity will keep you there. And I keep my integrity intact. So my thing was like, my artist was Cassie. I managed her. You know what I mean? He took her, dated her, and then got her to terminate my contract. You know what I mean? And I could have went after them, but I was like, she's a young girl, and I'm looking out for her. And this is a girl I went through wars with and for her.
But what made you? You just told us that before. When you and Reggie had the law firm, that if someone took your client, you went over there and went crazy. Now you look at Diddy did this. Why didn't you go after him?
No, we used to have it out. Like we almost got into it several times. On this particular thing it was the way it happened, and it was almost, it's kind of complicated because at the time, who was a close friend of mine at the time, but who ended up being my wife, was working for him.
Oh, okay.
So it was a very uncomfortable situation for her being an employee to go at his jugular. Because under any other circumstances, I would have went right at him.
Sure. When's the last time you seen Diddy?
I haven't seen him since face to face, maybe about a year ago. Ran into him in at a thing that VH1 was doing.
Yeah, that toothpick hanging way low when he seen you out of his mouth.
Yeah, no, actually, I saw him in a thing. We barely spoke because, like I said, it's a funny relationship. Yeah. Like, what I'm saying? There's no like, continuing thing. I don't call him, he don't call me. You know what I mean? We don't have that kind of relationship. And I'm not one to be pressing up on nobody's ass that got their own thing going on. But at the end of the day, I did a lot with him and for him too. Yeah. And he knows it. Yeah. He knows it.
Hey, listen, sometimes the hard relationships, some people don't admit what was done, but behind the scenes, only you could know. And he knows.
Because that's the only reason he got Cassie was because of me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I really had every other label trying to do a deal with her. And he wanted her, and we talked, and he gave me the spill and why he wanted her over there. And I made it happen, and that's when I was working for Tommy Mottola. And the pushback was they didn't want to go there with us. They wanted to go.
Man, you got so many goddamn stories. Why didn't they want to go back?
Because we had other opportunities that wasn't going to tie up into that particular situation and get caught up in, the what's I call it, like there's certain, this industry is built on a lot of fluff when you need something, but when they don't need you, then you're out of the pocket. You know what I mean?
Isn't that life though?
That's not,
when you're hot, they need you. When you're not, they don't want to be bothered.
Nah, but there's a certain level of respect that people have for individuals. That I have ongoing relationships with people that I don't need anything from them, but if they need something from me, I do something for them, and they do something for me. It's not about that. Life is short, man. You have that you come in this world broke and you're gonna die broke.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, people say, "Yeah, well, I didn't come in this world broke." Yeah, you did. Your family had money; they gave it to you, and when you leave, you can't take it with you. So you're leaving broke, in and out broke. So it's what you do, and what you do in between those years is what really paints who you are. And my thing is now is really been focused on what my legacy will be. And I also want to say this because I always talk about my father. I don't really talk about my mother too much. But my mother was actually the one, because of the way she raised me and exposed me to, she was like, I'm exposing you to everything I can potentially, afford. So we went to museums. We went to black camp half the summer, white camp half the summer. Like she wanted me to understand other cultures, everything, so that I wasn't like walking into the world blind, that I could actually deal with every type of situation and not feel like, somebody has an upper hand on me and you making decisions differently.
Is mom still around?
Yeah, my mother's still here.
Did you ever get a chance to tell her how much of that?
Oh, yeah, she's in. I just wrote a book. She's in the book. You know what I mean?
Okay, look at mom. Okay. Anyway, you know what? Let's take a break. Listen, you've been telling so many fucking stories, man. I think we're in a court meeting over here.
Now I got a lot of.
Listen, I want to go into the Tommy Mottola shit, man.
Let's do it.
But let's take a break. Internets, listen, get yourself a drink, maybe a Malta, maybe a Martinelli's apple juice, whatever it is. Just, you know what? Get yourself an L. Light that up. Don't get yourself a clove. Don't get yourself a clove. Them things get on your clothes and stink. But internet, you listen to the Premium P Show. My man Ed Woods is here. We chopping it up. We'll be right back. Don't go nowhere. Cheer.
What's up, guys? It's Illmind, music producer for the Stars. You already know what it is. You're checking out the Premium Pete Show, featuring Miss Lissa Knows. One of my favorite podcasts, man. This shit is amazing. All right? We out.
Internets, and we're back sitting here with my man Ed Woods, the entertainment lawyer, the personality, the TV guy now. Listen, before we even get into that type of stuff, you mentioned Tommy Mottola. How was that working? Explain what you did there.
Well, actually, when Tommy was leaving Sony, he was starting a new company under Casablanca. And, at the time, I had all these clients. I had about 100 and something clients.
Who were some of them?
The clients?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a who's list, man. I'm like, I can't even because it's timing. I'm like, who was I representing at the time? It was the Rhyme Fest. I had all these guys, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You got to remember, I'm the guy who we had Kanye West as a client, and I represented D-Dot, and I convinced them to let Kanye go as an artist because I said he would never be an artist. So everybody makes mistakes. Okay. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Listen, it's about owning up to some of your mistakes.
Oh yeah, no, you grow from them, But what I did is, had a nice firm growing. Had a bunch of lawyers. What I'm more proud of is the amount of lawyers that worked for me.
Underneath you?
Yeah, because...
That you put on. Who are some of them?
Jill Ramsey, who's now president of Wendy Williams' company.
Nice. Who else?
Nicole George, who's running Urban, all of the Urban Publishing at ASCAP.
Nice.
Indy Piper, who's second in charge of legal counsel at what's the name? TV One.
Okay.
I got lawyers who got their own firms. Everybody had a successful run. Even my assistant ended up being Deborah Lee's assistant. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I was like, I'm putting them out. Everybody's doing well. And I feel like I gave a lot back. You know what I mean? I was chairman of the Black Entertainment Sports and Lawyers Association, and on that board for 14 years. So I helped a lot of people. But we started with the first question was the Tommy Mottola thing. So what happened was I was doing so many deals with him in a week that it was like every time he would come in for a meeting, I'm showing up in the meeting. And he was like, yo, I keep seeing you here. Like, what's going on? So he just says, do you want to, I'd like to hire you. And, big shout out to Bimmy. He endorsed it because that's one of my clients. And Corey Rooney, I went to junior high school with. Mm-hmm. So he checking his resources, and Corey Rooney endorsed it. And I went over there and started working for him. And within 5 or 6 days of working for him, I got wind from somebody running their mouth and not realizing that I'm listening, that Usher was looking for a new manager. And we sat down. I told Tommy about it. We sat down. We approached his mother, and we ended up co-managing him for the Confessions album. So that was my launch in the relationship with Tommy. And then we ran from that. I signed Corey Guns when he was 16 years old, which was, off of a videotape before anybody really got on him.
Sure.
So, Peter and I set a deal, put it in motion.
Now, you were on that TV show called, what, Son of a Gun?
Son of a Gun, yeah.
Yeah. I remember who was on? Was that when you were going crazy?
Yeah, with Nick Cannon.
Yeah. What happened? Are you cool with Nick still?
Well, actually, we actually recently made up. I ran into him. It's funny. I went into D-Dot and I were at some event, and me, him, and Wesley Snipes, right? Mm-hmm. So they put us in a private area before the thing starts, like a little VIP area. Sure. So it's like we're the first ones that go in this room, and all of a sudden they put Nick Cannon in there, and I hadn't seen him since what's the name? So I just was like, listen, man, I got this show I'm doing on Money, Power, and Respect. I want you to come on.
Was that on WeTV?
Yeah, WeTV. I was like, I want you to come on the show with me so we can discuss our issues. So that's what we did, and we did it on the show. Nice. And Combat did the interview. And, we worked everything out, because before it was like, I was really hot with him. Like, it wasn't like bullshit.
Yeah, I remember that Son of the Gun. You were going crazy on that.
Nah, because they were undermining me, like, as if I'm like, some flubber dub off the street. And like, I'm not with that play shit when it's like I'm building something.
You mean as far as a lawyer? They were undermining you.
They were undermining me, but I was managing Corey at the time, right? You know what I'm saying? So he tried to step in on the management, and I was like, no. You mean you managing? They blindsided me on television and get it on tape. So, and then they kept going at my jugular with it, and they did some really funny editing stuff. But be honest with you, one thing I liked about Nick is that we was able to put that behind us, and we cool with shit right now.
Sure, I mean that's how it should be.
Yeah.
You don't need. Let me ask you something. What's the difference from a lawyer, right? What's the difference of a $50 lawyer an hour versus a $500 an hour lawyer? And the reason why I asked that for is because if you think about it, all the same information is out there. So what I'm asking you is, what does a higher paid lawyer do that makes them worth their money than versus a guy that's making $50 an hour?
Part of it is levels of experience. Most lawyers, if you're just getting started, you might be billing out at $200 an hour. And as you rise in experience, you can go up $300, $400, $500 an hour. You got lawyers that charge $750,000, $800,000 an hour in some of these major firms for these major acquisitions that take place when you having like these corporate buyouts and stuff. So, it just depends on the range. But I would say the fair number for most lawyers in the space of experience, if they really do that, they know what they're doing and whatever, they're pretty much $400, $500 hour lawyers that out there. But you $50 ain't nobody charging that to do no entertainment unless they a paralegal or something. You know what I mean?
Now you spoke about Money, Power, and Respect, the TV show you won on WeTV. Did you negotiate that deal?
For what?
Did you negotiate your own deal?
Did I for myself?
Yeah.
No, I'm not crazy.
So you hire someone to do your own deal?
Absolutely.
No, the reason why I asked that for is because you always come off as a guy to me that can handle your own shit.
Yeah,
like that.
I can, but do you? It's like
I don't know.
Let's use a doctor's example. You gonna operate on yourself?
I mean, shit. It depends where it is. If it's on my toe or my leg, I can reach it.
Come on. Now I always tell people, listen. It's like it's like I use medicine as examples all the time. You a doctor. You don't diagnose yourself. So I might come up with all my deal points and whatever, but I throw it to my guy who does the whatever, and he basically papers it and gets it done. I'm going to read over my contract because I understand it, but I've always had my own attorney. Virgil Roberts in L.A. Did all my deals, my employment deals, and things like that when I was working for Tommy. But I don't think anybody should be doing their own contracts.
I respect that.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask some up-and-coming lawyers, entertainment lawyers, any type of lawyers. What's some advice that you have for them?
One, to learn their craft. Because, I think they got a bad perception of what it takes to be an entertainment lawyer. Right now, I see a lot of lawyers running around that want to get in the game, and because of the internet and social media, they feel like, oh, I'm in the mix. And there's no level of experience on, there's more than just the law. You can read what you want to read. Because, I'm a professor. Sure. So I teach a lot of students. I'm a professor at Howard Law School. So what are things I teach these young students that are coming out and say, listen, when you go out in the real world, make sure you understand how to act and conduct yourself as a lawyer. And that includes understanding not just, the terms of a deal, but do you understand all the other elements? Do you understand copyright law? Do you understand the business law terms? Do you understand trademark law? Do you understand employment law? Like real issues that come into play. You can't be an effective negotiator unless you've actually spent time in that space. It's all about
information.
It's not just information. If you're going to be a guy who negotiates or a woman who negotiates, you have to be someone who understands there's an art to negotiating. There's a way to get a deal done, and it's like, and a lot of times what lawyers do is they don't have the experience of understanding the business. So what they're doing is they're operating off of deal points that don't matter. Mm-hmm. So what you're doing is you're killing a deal. I can tell when a lawyer is a new lawyer. They send me a paperwork that's marked up. There's 50,000 comments on it, and then they want to argue about things that's never going to come to play.
Yeah.
And I
like
say,
what?
listen,
like what?
It could be just arguing about, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, somebody sends you something and they want to keep going over the accounting provision and this is this and this is that. Listen, the music business is set up. The company pays you twice a month. You want to basically get audit rights. Boom. Let's move the hell on.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about certain things that don't make sense. And then I used to do this trick that my professor in law school taught me. He said, you can always tell whether somebody read the contract. So I will take things in a contract and stick it in there just to see if they read it in the drafts. Be like Mickey Mouse, put it in the miscellaneous section and put Mickey Mouse, has a brown hat on today, and stick it in there in the language where it's talking about New York law. And they don't look at it because they done skipped over all that, and they send it back. And Peter Pan jumped over the bush. And I'm telling you, you'd be surprised how many people come. I'm looking at this. I'm like, where's the comment on this?
Yo, people don't read the fine print, man.
They don't.
Let me ask you something. You're talking about lawyers, right? But how about this? Switching it around for a second. How many of your clients really understand their deals?
Oh, my clients understand it.
Okay, why? Because you explain to them?
I explain it to them because the more informed they are, the easier it is for them to digest it. And also, it makes my job easier in the progression of time as we go through, that they can actually, they learn not to make mistakes. I don't want them negotiating on their behalf, but I want them to understand it because they're actually the first one on the front line. You get a guy, he goes out and he's down in Miami. He meets somebody at a conference. They say, I want to offer you a publishing deal. And he starts running off at the mouth saying, yeah, I want this, I want that. That's not what they're going to do. I'm going to explain to them how they're going to handle it. But they at least know what publishing is. I'll give you a good example. I will put 2 of my clients up against attorneys all day long, and I guarantee they out-negotiate them. And I got one attorney that we joke all the time, my man from Chaz from Blackhand, he litigates his own cases. He's that good at it, but they've taken the time to learn it. DDOT, it tell you more about publishing than most lawyers know. And they don't understand the numbers. They don't understand the Copyright Act. They don't understand the Digital Millennium Act. You're talking about streaming income. If you don't have the information of what you're dealing with, okay, everybody's like, yeah, I want to get, I'm supposed to get my streaming income. Do you understand who the players are right now? Do you understand YouTube has the largest share, but their return on what they pay out is smaller because they're not collecting any money? Spotify getting 16%. Did you know that what Pandora's getting is about 10%? Deezer's getting about 2.6%. I read everything you can imagine that comes across my desk. And not only do I read that, I read philosophy. I'm studying Archimedes right now. He said, give me the ground to stand on and I can shake the world. I want to go into a room and kick my feet up and have a conversation that people look in there saying like, oh my God, they're in awe because they don't understand. They ain't read nothing. And if you just sit time and spend some time reading and learning, another thing I give advice to is read a lot of autobiographies on the life stories of these artists because the stories are very cyclical. It's a cycle that keeps happening over and over again. There's a book that I always recommend people to read. It's called Being Mr. S. And it's about Frank Sinatra. The butler wrote it. And it's a great book because the butler of Frank Sinatra. Wow. But
what's the name of it again?
Being Mr. S. But it's basically you get his version of what Frank Sinatra was like.
Yeah, and that's the real deal version. Yeah. Let me ask you. You went to Hampton, right? Yep. You graduated from Howard.
Yep.
So my question to you is, which is the real HU?
Come on, man. That's a crazy
question.
Come
on, I'm asking
Hampton University, man.
HU?
Right, yeah. Yo, let me say something. All the people ask me all the time. They get confused. They be like, yeah, you went to Howard. I said, no, listen, I went to law school at Howard. I went to Hampton University because it's your college years that kind of camaraderie, balance, and competitiveness things happen. In law school, you in there trying to learn the books. You ain't goofing. Our campus is separate from Howard's undergrad campus. Mm-hmm. So you're not really in the mix of being around like in the fraternities and all that kind of stuff. That's college days. So I'm Hampton all day.
Okay, there we go. HU. You've done some TV, obviously, with the Money, Power, Respect. You also been on Love and Hip Hop, you know, as like a confidant to Stevie J, like a business dealmaker?
I represent Stevie. I handle him, and Stevie actually
pause to handle him.
Yeah. Nah, Stevie's my man. We've been down since Stevie sold is responsible and connected to over 100 million records with 5 Grammys. It's
crazy, right?
So
you know what's so crazy? I guarantee you that
the guy plays 17
No,
instruments.
but hold up. I guarantee you that the people watching Love and Hip Hop, I would say 50-60% of them only know him from Love and Hip Hop. Have no fucking idea what this guy has done in the music industry.
Yeah, they're about to know because we're about to turn this sucker up and then start putting out music under his new brand that we're basically getting ready to do. But
you and him have been have a great relationship for years. I've known you.
Yeah,
and you had a great relationship with him for years.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts of Stevie as a person?
Stevie is probably one of the most. He's a gentleman, but he's one of the most mannerable guys. When a person has manners, like you watch how he treats a woman. Like you can go out and he holds the door for everybody. It's a certain way that you've been raised, that there's a level of respect that he deals with. And most people get a different perception from him because of the way he acts with, his relationships and his personal relationships. And they say, oh yeah, he's a dog, he's doing this, whatever. But he's honest. One thing about it, he's just telling his lifestyle. You got to say, him and I lived in the same building. And this is in my single days, in the wild days of the industry. We lived in the same building. This is when he was dating Eve.
Okay.
And then...
Who, Eve?
Yeah, he was dating Eve. So we lived in the same building. So our shenanigans go back to then. And one thing I can say about Stevie, when I first met him, it was Puff who referred him to me.
Really?
Puff sent him to Reggie and I. We went to the studio to meet him, and he was sitting in the corner, and he was like, I just want to make music. I'm not into this partying. I don't do that, all that stuff. I just want to focus on music. Then he called me the next day and said, hey, I'm not going to be able to use you because I was recommended by my father to use another firm, but I want to pay you. Could you come by the studio? And gave me money, paid me, and I never did any work for him.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, yo, that was really like, he's like, I felt like I wasted your time. Come by and get some money, and he paid me.
Let me tell you something. Not many people would do that type of shit.
Not at all.
That's an honorable thing to do.
Yeah. So we've been cool, and we've had our ups and downs. He's like because he's younger
brother?
than me. Yeah, he's like
Younger brother?
Younger brother. Sometimes he gets on my nerves, and we get into it. We fall out and whatever. But that's the growing pains. But at the end of the day, there's certain people that I came up with that it's always going to be like that.
Can you give us some tips on negotiations, maybe for somebody coming up that wants to learn some? Not all your sauce. Don't give all your sauce away. But is there like a tip you have on a negotiation that somebody could use, an aspiring lawyer right now?
Yeah, well, I wrote this book called Wood Chips, right?
Okay, Wood Chips. Yeah.
Wood Chips is based on being an entrepreneur, but a lot of what's in there is the power to use certain things, the power to listen. For example, I remember, and I share a little bit of this in the book, is where I represented a legendary boxing promoter who's, rest in peace, my man Butch Lewis. And Butch, he told me a story. He said, listen, we were actually walking in an elevator. We just came out of walking on a deal, and I started talking. And he told me to shut up. And then I'm like, so I'm quiet and get out the elevator. He said, listen, don't you ever talk on an elevator again, because you never know who's listening and paying attention. And he shared a story with me how years before that, years in the past, he was doing a deal, and he went out to smoke a cigarette, and two guys was outside smoking a cigarette too, and they said basically, told him like, yeah, they working on that deal upstairs. I think they're going to close it at this number. I think they should have probably got a couple of more $1 million on the table had they been listening. They had no idea that he was the one up there negotiating. He went back up there and basically got all the money that they were talking back on the table. So he said, never discuss anything. And I use that when I say the power to listen. Another thing I always tell people is that, you could be the best running back, but without an offensive line blocking for you, you're not shit. So your team is what makes you win. So it's like going into surgery, right? If you go into a situation, you want to basically make sure your surgeon's not doing the surgery by himself. There's an anesthesiologist, there's nurses, there's people who do the checkpoints, all the various things that are in play to get a deal done. So make sure if you're getting into a situation and you do not have the wherewithal to get a deal done, don't try to do that deal on your own. You're going to lose your client, right? And two, you're going to not maximize. You counting pennies. So always put your money in numbers versus in percentages, because people get caught up. I want 12%. I want 10%. Well, do the math first. What is that? What's the difference in that? You make $1 million and they decide to pay you 15%, or they pay you 10%. And you arguing over the percentages, but when you do the math, what are the numbers? Okay, yeah, you save $50,000, but you got the deal done. You know what I mean? And you still walked away with $900,000, $950,000. So I try to give them real life examples, but from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and every deal is different. So anytime someone says to me, this is how we do business, we don't change anything. This is every deal can be changed. There's certain ways you got to get it done, but you got to know who you're talking to, who has the power to get that deal done. And also you always negotiate. This is a tip for them. When you send out, you make them as best as you can, put that deal numbers on the table first, because that becomes your floor. When somebody says, send me a proposal, that becomes your ceiling.
Yeah.
So you're negotiating against yourself. I'm not going to negotiate against myself. I come to the table, I say, yeah, we'll make an offer. Well, they make the offer now. Okay, I know I'm not getting less than that. We going up from there. If I come with the number, you're going to start negotiating me down.
Class is in session with Mr. Ed Woods. I'll tell you one thing. I learned a lot from you today. And I'll tell you, you know what I learned? I learned you don't talk in the elevator. Okay? So I'm not going to talk in the elevator no more. Actually saying that, I want to cue some elevator music right now. Hey, listen, Ed, you're teaching me, man. We had to have a private conversation real quick, and we played the elevator music, and drown out what we're talking about. But listen, where could the internet find you on social? What are you on Twitter?
Everything's beinedwoods.com.
So,
Being Ed Woods.
Well,
so,
Being Ed Woods, BEING.
Ed Woods, yeah, and that's on Instagram and Twitter.
So you got the book, right?
Yes, Wood Chips.
Wood Chips available all over.
You can get that on BarnesandNobles.com, Amazon.com, and the ebook is available now too.
Money, Power, and Respect. What's up with that?
I don't know what's going to happen with that. They haven't given word whether it's coming back or not. I'm developing shows as an executive producer, and I'm also putting together a new show based around a different version of myself as this, as a deal maker. It's a unique show. I think it's going to be super entertaining, and also I'm going to be doing some with the new second season of Leave It to Stevie. I'll be helping him develop on the show what our new project is going to be as part of the show. So,
what about Love and Hip Hop? Some more appearances on there?
Probably not. That was something that was, unless he needs me to do something. But right now that was spontaneous. We were actually out, and we got and that was a real scenario situation. We got the results, and they needed somebody to get them.
Sure.
And they came directly to me.
What's your relationship with Mona Scott?
It's great. Mona and I go back before this television stuff. So, when I used to work for Louise, her clients were Timbaland and Missy Elliott. So I've known Mona, and she managed them at the time. So I've known Mona since I started.
Yeah.
We have a great relationship, and we go to war, but you go to war, but we go to war in a more friendly way. Mona's a beast, though. She's not playing. You know what I mean?
What do you think about people who try to say that she is, basically a content creator of ratchet shit? You ever hear that? You ever hear people say that?
But they not. My problem with that, and somebody said this yesterday. Somebody made a comment on my Instagram page about how could you support this type of business and whatever, and I got in their ass. I said, do you understand? Until you go in at major corporations, advertisers, you got major corporations that are buying ad time. Viacom, all these major companies that are making money. This is a multi-million-dollar business, to the point where you also go with any violent movie that comes out, any hip-hop album that's calling somebody a bitch or whatever, till you take any salacious book that's ever been put on the market, and then you go with their jugular. Then you can say something about somebody who's these people on these shows have rights. They have assets. These are copyrights. And there's a whole bunch of lawyers that work for Viacom who are Harvard grads and worked in. They're doing the same thing. They're cutting deals based on that. But they want to blame a black woman for having a show and then put all the weight on her shoulders. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But then you got the highest viewed show. Who's watching it? You know what I mean? They got the number one show on television, and everybody else is benefiting from it. But you find the black woman and you try to tear her back out. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So
I would say when they went at me the other day, I went in on them. Because I said, don't you ever come at me unless you prepared to really go at me the right way.
Well, listen, it's important to stick up for someone in the sense of with factual substance stuff. I think sometimes people just say shit out of the blue and maybe not may know all the facts of stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah, because do you understand? Do you understand how many people they hire? And she has partners. I don't hear them calling their names out.
Yeah.
Have they done the research? She's in business with Easton. Have they done the research to find out the other individuals who are in business with her? No, you're finding one person out of the many that are making the money, and Viacom's making the most off of this. Why don't you call up the head of this company or the head of that company and say something? You know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, what I can say, if you don't like the content, don't watch it. Turn it off. Change it to something else.
That's fucking easy.
It's just like buying a magazine, a porn magazine.
Yeah.
If you don't like porn, don't buy the magazine. But I don't see anybody finding out who did the last Penthouse or the last
I
Playboy.
like to look at the magazine before I buy it sometimes, the porno one.
Yeah, but that's what you should do.
Ain't no wrong with that.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But it's like if I sold sexual products, you know what I mean? The new Luby Doobie vibrator for girls. Ain't nobody checking for me, arguing with me about that. We're getting caught up in things that I shouldn't get caught up in. And do the math, look at the numbers. Everybody else is making money off of these products and these artists out there. And you know what? How many people she employs? I mean, how many? I'm talking about. You go to one of these sessions. The reunion thing they had it had to be 100 people with jobs, and that's not. I'm talking about marketing, promotion, accounting, whatever, jobs.
Yeah, and you know what? Most people complaining may not even have a job.
Yeah.
So don't Hey, listen. I don't listen. Anyway, listen, Ed. I really appreciate you coming through. I'm gonna tell you. This was filled with gems, filled with also for people who aspire. Like when we had Ken Montgomery on, there was people writing now how they aspire to be a lawyer and they learned a lot. I know they're going to learn a lot from this episode. And
shout out to Kenneth Montgomery. We actually went to Hampton together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was a couple of years, 2 years behind me, but yeah, that's my man.
This world is a short world, But I will say this: for first of all, I want to thank you. More importantly, not only for coming through, not only for being here today, but more importantly, I want to thank you for believing in me. There's plenty of times we met and you pulled me to the side and really gave me a great sense of confidence. And, we still haven't really found a lick to get something going, but you always have really just gave me such a lot of confidence and believe in me and let me know how talented I am, and that you want to, always trying to find something. So I appreciate that.
Now you keep a genuine spirit that needs to be heard and a voice that needs to be heard, because it's rare you find people who will not waver on their principles, just or where they will waver on any principle just because you really want to know. You even told me when I was talking about getting on the show, he's like, let's find the right, when the right timing and whatever. Fine.
Sure.
I'm here for that. And shout out to the Krabby Shack.
Most definitely. Your wife's in Brooklyn, Krabby Shack. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, visit the Krabby Shack.
And crab rolls are delicious in Brooklyn, and definitely support that. More importantly, check for Ed Woods, Being Ed Woods on all the social
and
platforms.
also they can hit me on when they hit me on Instagram directly. What I do also is I consult on Skypes.
Okay, nice.
For a minimal fee. So a lot of people around the country, they just Skype with me, and we sit on a thing, and I'll share whatever information they need. There's nothing about this industry I don't know, and I say that very, very confident and cocky, but that's what it is.
Class is in session.
Yeah.
Before we go, I never even asked you, Wesley Snipes. How did that relationship come about, man? Wesley
Snipes is part of what is our internal crew. So, which is made up of a unique bunch of guys that Butch Lewis put together. Judge Mathis, Denzel, Leon Spinks. It's a whole bunch of us. And we all came together, and we had this thing. We get together and have meetings and talk about things in karate and things that we can do together and whatever. And Wes and I built a great relationship. And shout out to Wes. He just did a great book situation that's going to be coming out on a storyline that's a really incredible story on demigods and whatever, and actually have a movie that I'm a co-executive producer with D-Dot with him.
Really?
Yeah, called Arson. Yeah.
Listen. Too many things Ed is doing, but check for him. And like I said, this is definitely a lot of gems in there, and I think that's what the audience has grown to understand as gems and take some away. I never want to do something where people are, I'm like, yo, just listen to my show. Mm-hmm. That's kind of corny. I want people to get something from it, and this is one of those episodes. And like I said, just your career alone, there's a lot of people who may not understand just even you and Reggie teaming up together and what y'all did, and both of y'all's later on moving on and finding your own lanes and growing, and I'm just proud of y'all, most definitely.
I appreciate that, and there's much love. And like I said, anytime you need me, whatever it is, I'm here. I'm trying to do this.
Hey, listen, I'm gonna leave the internets on this last thing. I'll never forget. We may have been doing some deal or whatever. The show was in the Combat Jack show was in the mid part. Maybe 3 years in or whatever. And I remember you came up to one of the studio one time, and we were talking about trying to get a deal with some. I don't remember who it was, but you were like, yo, we should get we should do a package for $1 million. And me and like Reggie, I remember looking at you like, what the fuck, $1 million? Like we were talking about like maybe 50,000. and at that time, I remember like Reggie looked at me and what we realized is we said, you need someone to think as crazy as that. like as you, like fuck around like somebody like, that's too much. And then you get jerked. Mm-hmm. But imagine someone just goes in there and like, yo, they're worth this because this, and they come back with a fucking $1 million. Then all of a sudden, what do you say? But you need someone to foresee the vision of doing a blockbuster deal like that. And not everybody is like that. Mm-hmm. Not that you didn't get us $1 million. I wish. But what I'm saying is the mindset is something I respect. So listen, internets, Ed Woods, check for him. See you next episode. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on all platforms, and I'll see you next episode. Cheer. Beautiful.